Hi everyone, I'm Jay King here with Torch Sports. We have a great episode today as always. On Orange Zone, Jackson, Zach, Colton, and Luke are giving you a preview to Saturday's big matchup versus Texas A&M and talking about what they saw last Saturday in the college football world. In this week's Pick 6, Brendan and Grant are giving their takes on the 6 biggest games coming up in college and the NFL this weekend. In this week's edition of Rocky Talk, Riley, Caitlin, and Matt will break down the MLB playoffs. And on Sportscast, Jordan will talk about the Titans and their tough loss to the Colts. Once again, I'm Jay King, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Orange Zone. I'm your host, Jackson Chalk, alongside Zach, Colton, and making his camera debut, we're not allowed to clap because of the mics, Luke. After their Week 6 bye, the Vols face the first leg of their cutthroat October schedule facing Texas A&M. The Aggies are coming off a 6-point loss at home to Alabama and will meet a checkered Neyland Stadium. So I'm going to ask you guys, what stood out to you most from that game, Texas A&M versus Alabama?
I mean, I think for me, it was very clear that both teams struggle with the run game quite a bit. I mean, you don't often see a game where the combined run yardage is under 100 yards. So, I mean, it's kind of an anomaly. But, I mean, Texas A&M held Bama to 23 yards, and I attribute that to their defense entirely. I mean, the front four for Texas A&M looks really strong right now. I mean, they look like they're putting pressure on the quarterback. They're stopping the run game. And I think that really helped them, especially in the first half against Bama, because they looked really strong and obviously dominated the first half of that game.
This guy's a pro. Zach, what do you got?
So my thing is the Texas A&M front seven. They have one of the best front sevens, if not the best front seven in the country, with averaging about 15% of the snaps are sacks.
Wow.
So, and they counted for 7 against Arkansas and 6 against Alabama. So that's going to be a real problem coming into Knoxville.
That's tough to beat.
Yeah.
We're all on the same page here. It's the rushing defense was definitely the biggest surprise to me, just watching that game. Not really surprised because they've been doing that all year, but that was the first time I've watched them, and it looked impressive. Jaron Cooper, I believe, is the linebacker for them. He had 11 tackles, 3 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss in that game. He leads the SEC in tackles for loss and is second in sacks in the SEC too. So he's going to be a tough. He's going to be tough for the Vols to get through it for sure. But yeah, their rushing defense is really good. It's the best we've faced so far, and I think Tennessee's going to have to step up if they want to win against Texas A&M.
Absolutely.
Especially since we did not do well at Florida at all in the running game, and that's what we are now. We're a run-first team. So it's going to be a struggle.
Let's take a look. Let's focus a little more on what the weaknesses of A&M are, and which ones do you think the Vols are going to need to really exploit to win this game?
I mean, frankly, the way I watched that game, I looked at their offense and said the whole offense needs a little bit of a boost. I mean, just running off with backup quarterback Max Johnson, 14 for 25, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception. Not a great stat line. And, you know, it's kind of clear that when he's under pressure, he's not the greatest at getting out of pressure.
Nope.
So I think, I mean, for the Vols, it's going to be important for them to put pressure on Max Johnson and make sure that he's kind of out of his comfort zone and getting a little uncomfortable with moving out of the pocket and not just kind of staying still and throwing.
Yeah, I agree. I think Max Johnson is. We've got to take advantage of him having a backup quarterback in. I think that's huge. But I think their passing defense has been maybe one of the main reasons why they've lost their 2 games. I know that Tyler Van Dyke in the game against Miami had 374 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jalen Milroe had his best game of the season this week for Alabama, like 330 yards and 3 touchdowns, I believe. So I think it comes down to Joe this week. I mean, we've talked about their rushing defense and how good it is. So we're going to have to move the ball through the air a little bit better than we have in the past weeks to get this win. And I think Joe's really got to step up. Like we've talked about the last couple of weeks, he's got to play better. And I think a big statement. I think that if he does not have the best game he's played so far this season, I don't think we win this game. So I think he's really got to step up.
Absolutely.
I think it does help that their secondary, A&M secondary, is a little weaker with Isaiah Bond going for 97 yards and a touchdown, and then Jermaine Burton going for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think we got some receivers out there. Thornton, maybe Caleb Webb stepping up, but definitely Squirrel getting down in the flat. I think if Joe really hones it in this game, I think we have a good chance. But that's if he can throw it downfield.
I mean, who do you guys think is going to fill this Brew McCoy-sized hole in the wide? I mean, we have to kind of face the elephant in the room. We're missing one of the Volunteers' best wide receivers. Who's going to fill in there?
Yeah, I mean, you say brew-sized hole. And I mean, that's a hard hole to fill, 6'3", 220, just
big
frame-wise.
dude. He's a big
that's a hard
dude.
hole to fill. But I mean, he's a real leader of the team, and you know, he can do it all. He can catch, he can block, and you know, we've seen that. But I mean, I think like Zach was saying, the three main guys that I'm looking to see step up are Thornton, Squirrel White, and then Caleb Webb. And you know, we have some younger receivers on the team. I just think it's a matter of kind of getting some more people in the rotation now as well, some younger guys now that you have that open spot, and kind of seeing what works with our offense as well.
Baptism by fire, if you will.
Well, Caleb Webb is a Bruce-sized replacement. He's 6'3", 200, so it's not a bad fit for him to be out there in the flat. Now he only has played against I want to say it's UTSA so far. But I think that he's probably gotten enough reps in practice that he could go out there and make some moves. Hey, Squirrel did it last year, and he performed pretty damn well.
It's true. True that.
Yeah.
Now let's get kind of to the, let's wrap it up here. What do you guys think the final score prediction is going to be? Colton, let's start with you.
You know, going into this, looking at the research, I expected to pick Tennessee in this game, but looking at the stats, you know, I'm going to try and be unbiased. I think A&M's got this one, I'll be honest.
Ooh.
27-17 is my final
Wow.
score prediction. I think their rushing defense is just too good. I mean, we talked about the run game in each 3 of these weeks, but this is by far the best rushing defense we've faced. And the last time we faced a good rush defense was against Florida, and our running game was not as good, like not even close to the other 3 weeks. And I think it's going to come down to Joe. And if he can step up, we can win. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think A&M's got this one.
Colton being devil's advocate there. Wow.
I'm going to go the complete opposite. I have faith in the Vols. I think with the week off, they're going to have, you know, they're going to be kind of in practice. I think Joe's got this one. He's looked a little bit better in the previous games. I got the Vols 31-20 on this one.
I like it.
Wow, you're giving generosity there. I got the Vols, but I think it's going to be way closer than that. I have them 24-21. I think it's going to be a real close, ugly football game, but I think they'll pull it out in the end. I think that bye week is definitely going to help them get some rest and hopefully go out there and hopefully we see the best team we have this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a rock fight. Not going to lie. As a fan, kind of nervous.
Yeah,
But we can
very
check her all we
nervous.
want, but it's a tough team. It's a tough team. Well, that's going to wrap up our Week 7 preview, but don't go anywhere because when we return, we will be over at the Den to discuss our Week 6 terrors. But in the meantime, we are going to send it over to Grant and Brendan for our Pick 6 predictions. Take it away, gentlemen.
What's up, guys? I'm Brendan Green,
And I'm Grant Porch.
and it's that time of the week when we go over this week's Pick 6 games of the week.
Today, we're going to give you our picks on 3 critical games in college football, as well as 3 more in the NFL. First off, we have Texas A&M coming here to Knoxville to take on the Vols. The line is 3.5 in favor of Tennessee. Brendan, what were your initial thoughts when you saw the opening line?
Well, when I first saw the spread, it wasn't very surprised. The Neyland environment is a major factor into Tennessee being favored in this matchup, but the Vols will be facing a formidable defense that gave Alabama some trouble.
Yeah, they certainly did, but it can't be ignored how much Alabama beat themselves in this game. They committed 14 penalties for a staggering 99 yards. A lot of that can be attributed to being on the road in a hostile environment in College Station. But the bad news is for the Aggies is they won't have that sort of advantage this week as they come into Knoxville. Tennessee comes into this matchup with a winning streak at home that dates all the way back to the 2021 matchup against Georgia. And on the other side, the Aggies haven't won a road game since 2021 against Mizzou. With this one being in Knoxville, Tennessee will win, and not only will they win, but they'll cover the spread as well. Texas A&M does present a challenge along the line of scrimmage as they held Alabama to just 0.9 yards per carry and 23 yards throughout the whole game. And while that's concerning, being a run-first team with Tennessee, I don't see the A&M defense having the same success on Saturday. Brendan, do you think Tennessee will be able to run the ball and win the game?
This matchup is going to be a tough one. We're playing against one of the toughest defenses in college football, and in order for us to come out on top, the offense of Joe Milton are going to have to limit the mistakes. However, I believe that the Vols will pull out on top of this matchup due to our 3-headed monster known as Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson.
I know that I'll be at the game loud and proud for the Vols, so I hope you all will be as well. Next up, we go to the Pac-12 for what might be a conference championship elimination matchup between Oregon and Washington. This one will be one of the most interesting games of the week. According to FoxSports.com, this matchup is going to feature the number 1 and number 3 odds-on favorites to win the Heisman. Now, I've gone back and forth on my pick in this matchup, but I'm going to go with Oregon. This will be a competitive game, no doubt, but Bo Nix will have his Heisman moment here and show why Oregon is well on their way to the playoff. Brendan, who do you think will come out on top in the border war?
This matchup features two QBs that make up a stacked QB draft incoming on this NFL draft. Personally, I cannot wait to watch this matchup. The deciding factor will be the QB play and which QB is able to win it in the clutch. And with that, I'm going to go with Bo Nix and the Ducks to win it against in a nail-biter against Washington.
That's a good point about the experience, and Bo Nix certainly has that as a fifth-year starter. When you think about that along with the physicality of the Oregon defense, you can see how the Ducks will come out on top. For our last college football pick, we have a classic matchup between USC and Notre Dame. Now, these last two matchups have really given me a headache in predicting the winner, and in this one, I see Notre Dame coming out on top. Yes, they did just lose to Louisville. Even so, they have this thing called a defense. A week ago, USC allowed 41 points against Arizona, and the defense is why Lincoln Riley coach teams have found themselves short of the national championship every single year. I see that biting them in this game in a classic rivalry win for the Irish. Brendan, do you agree with me, or are you backing Caleb Williams and the Trojans?
Listen, I love Caleb Williams. He's quite possibly the best quarterback talent we've seen in years. There are plays I've seen him accomplish that genuinely make my head pop off, like him bull rushing into the end zone last week against Arizona. But like you said, with Notre Dame having this thing called a defense, as many plays as Caleb Williams can make, it still won't make up whether his defense could get any semblance of a stop in this game. So give me Notre Dame to win it.
That'll do it for our college predictions this week, and now we move on to the NFL. So did Joe Burrow have his arrival in 2023 last week? I know that sounds weird to say after 5 games, but it's been clear that he's been struggling through a calf injury. And you could see that it was greatly impacting his ability to move around the pocket. But Burrow says he feels good now, so I believe him. Yes, it was just the Cardinals they just beat, but his performance last week cannot be overstated as he threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. As for Seattle, outside of an egg they laid against the Rams, have looked very good this year. Their secondary should give the Bengals passing game a challenge. But do you see things that way, Brendan?
When your offense looks out of sync, just go to Arizona. Last week we got to see Burrow to Chase it. We saw that Burrow to Chase chemistry come back as Chase broke a franchise record of receptions as well as 3 touchdowns catches. However, Seattle is not Arizona, clearly, as they have playmakers like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, and Zach Charbonnet, which will give the Bengals secondary trouble, as their secondary did not look that good against Arizona and previous opponents through the last 6 weeks. So the biggest deciding factor will be on the defensive line. They're going to have to lean on players like Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, B.J. Hill, and DJ Reader to get the pressure on Geno Smith. This is going to be the hardest one, but I'm going to say Cincinnati to win to continue their winning streak.
I'll have to agree with you there, Brendan. While this certainly isn't a lock, I lean towards Cincinnati in this matchup. And next up, we have Tampa Bay against Detroit. At the beginning of the season, not many people would have guessed the records of both of these teams correctly. Detroit, coming in at 4-1, is certainly a turnaround from the Lions of old. They showed signs of improvement last year and are finally taking that step forward towards the playoffs this season. And as for Tampa Bay, their win total was only 6.5 going into the year, and everyone expected them to fall apart after the retirement of the GOAT, Tom Brady. Personally, I lean Detroit in this matchup. What do you think, Brendan?
I agree with you. I love this defense. Ben Johnson has been cooking up incredible creative plays for players like rookie Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamison Williams, and even David Montgomery. And that defense has been looking incredible since week 9 of last year. Aiden Hutchinson got his 4th interception last week and is already looking like a generational edge rusher. Give me Detroit over Tampa Bay in this matchup.
Good pick, Brendan. But to finish things off, we're looking at the Sunday night matchup with the Dallas Cowboys going on the road to face the Chargers. A week ago, the Cowboys got utterly embarrassed by the 49ers. Their defense, which had carried them for most of the season, was absolutely picked apart in every way imaginable by Brock Purdy and George Kittle, along with that rest of the juggernaut they call an offense. Although I do see a bounce-back performance from Dallas this week, Justin Herbert and the Chargers should bring a challenge of their own. Brendan, what are your thoughts on this Sunday night matchup?
The Chargers should obviously be a challenge for Dallas. They have a ton of talent with more than what their record shows. However, I'm going to go with Dallas in this one solely because of 2 reasons. Number one, this is going to be essentially a Cowboys home game, whereas there's going to be about 85 to 90% of Cowboys fans in SoFi Stadium. And number 2, Brandon Staley can't go for it in 4th down in their own territory and expect to get bailed out for the 3rd week in a row, right? So give me Dallas over the Chargers in this one.
Give me Dallas, too. They still have an outstanding defense, and I expect Dak to have a much better game than he had a week ago, as the Chargers' defense is nowhere near the level of San Francisco's. And with that, that's all we have for you today on the Pick 6. Be sure to turn in next week with more great insight.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Rocky Talk segment. I'm your host, Riley Haltom, joined by Caitlin Gill and Matthew Solitsky. We got a lot to talk about. Let's dive right into some NFL action. A few big names just hit injured reserve. Breakout rookies like Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson and Dolphins running back Devon Achane and superstar wide receiver Justin Jefferson are all out for at least 4 games. Caitlin, we'll start with you. Which of these injuries will have the biggest impact on their respective teams?
Well, I feel like the obvious answer is Anthony Richardson. I mean, losing your QB1 is obviously the biggest factor. But I think in terms of season projection, I'd go with Justin Jefferson and the Vikings because they've had an extremely disappointing start. We are 1-4 at this point, and now Justin Jefferson is out for 4 games, and this is the worst time for him to go out. You have 2 divisional matchups coming up, and I never thought I'd say this, but I actually picked the Bears to beat the Vikings this week, and that's a lot coming from me. And then you got the 49ers coming up. That's an obvious loss. And then Packers and Falcons could be back and forth. So I'm not saying it's over, but what is over, basically, is his race for MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, 4 games out is a huge deal. And right now he's sitting at 36 catches for 571 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's looking good, but his absence is not looking good for the Vikings.
I like how you said that. You said, I'm going to go Jefferson, but anytime you lose your quarterback, it's a bigger deal, which is why I'm taking Richardson. Richardson, like anytime you lose your quarterback, especially you're talking about the guy of the franchise, right? It's a big deal. More importantly, you lose Jefferson, you lose a singular bullet. You lose Richardson, you lose the entire gun, right? So you go down with Richardson, and speaking, by the way, by Kirk Cousins, he's got Jordan Addison, who's an average receiver. He's got to make the right plays. Anytime you lose your quarterback, it's significant, regardless of whether he's the 32 ranked in the NFL or number 1. It's significant. And anytime you have to go to your backup, it's significant. I'll take Richardson.
Okay, I will comment on that. I will say, number 1, Justin Jefferson is basically their whole offense.
Well,
and he is arguably
Richardson's QB1.
the best wide receiver in the league. So I think that's a huge dent in the Vikings offense right now. And obviously, but the Colts was anyone really expecting anything from the Colts this season?
Oh,
I mean,
you have a rookie
Vikings were the
quarterback who's
guests
trying
for
to make
the
a name for himself.
second place in the NFC North, and now they are probably going to, well, can't be worse than the Bears, but they could be last place. So I think it makes a huge dent in their offense. Obviously, QB1 is a big deal, but so is wide receiver 1.
Yeah, more important than both of those maybe is head coach. The New England Patriots are 1-4, and it looks like the dynasty is finally over. Brady has retired. Is it time for the struggling Bill Belichick to follow suit, Matthew?
No, not at all. That's a ridiculous statement. Even saying the words fired is ridiculous. Look, Robert Kraft, in the news over the last week has been, should Robert Kraft relieve Belichick of duty? No. There are 3 coaches in sports, in the entire sports world, that will never, ever get fired. You talk about Belichick, the Patriots, Eric Spoelstra, and the Miami Heat, and then Nick Saban of Alabama. Those are 3 coaches that will never, ever get fired. Forget age. It doesn't matter. Look at Greg Popovich, okay? He's been coaching for over 30 years and has one of the best records, actually number 1 as of this year, in NBA history in terms of wins, okay? Age doesn't mean anything. No, he should not be fired. Give him some pieces to work with, and then he'll produce something. Saying he should retire or get fired is just ridiculous.
Okay, not retire.
He's the greatest coach to ever coach the game of football.
Not get fired, retire. Because at this
Retire,
point,
fired, same thing.
being here after the Brady-Belichick debate, everyone's like, who made who? Obviously, different times. But right now, they had a 34-0 loss to the Saints Sunday, and before that, a 38-3 loss to Dallas. And the Patriots have never lost a consecutive game by 34 points, and that really says a lot. And Belichick's response to this is the Patriots need to start over. No offense, he's 71. I don't know what restarting you're going to be able to do with him. And in terms, he did pick a long snapper in the first round. So I think he's picking his own weapons at this point. And he did put his eggs in the Mac Jones basket, and it's backfiring. So I think there's places to go.
I wouldn't say it's backfiring.
But do you think Mac Jones is doing good right now?
No, I wouldn't say good, but I wouldn't say Mac Jones has met the expectation, but the expectation wasn't high to begin with.
I disagree. I mean,
of course you do.
He's coming in a strain of quarterback madness, and Jordan Love, we'll get to him in a little bit, but Mac Jones is trying to fill the shoes of Tom Brady. Is that possible to do? No, but it's not working well for them, and the Patriots are just disappointing. So I think you cut your losses and just call it quits.
Kraft would be making a colossal mistake firing the greatest coach to ever coach the game of professional football. It's not even a close
But
debate.
he's also at risk right now. Brady's going, he's not going to be the winningest coach because they're losing so much.
He doesn't care.
You're going out on a high note or a low note, and right now they're on a low note. So that's all I got to say. Cut your losses while you're down.
Yeah, speaking of a low note, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers' successor, and things aren't looking quite as sweet in Wisconsin. 10 total touchdowns, 8 turnovers, 10 sacks on the season. Caitlin, are you still loving Love?
Of course, I still love Love. It is week 5, y'all. RELAX. Relax. He's got to have time to grow, and he's working with the youngest offense in the NFL right now. I got a few notes of comparison, and before I get to this, everyone's telling me, stop comparing them. He's not Aaron Rodgers. But it is the same circumstance. I'm fully aware. I don't want him to play like Aaron Rodgers. I want him to play like Jordan Love.
That's 'cause he
Create
can't.
your own identity on this team. We're 5 games in, and you can argue he's been playing for 3
And
years.
they stink.
Does
The Packers
preseason
stink. They're
football-
2-3.
Does preseason football prepare you for the top defenses in the NFL? Absolutely not. And at these points of comparison, Rodgers didn't have the greatest first year ever in terms of Rodgers criteria. He had 4,038 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. That big 13 doesn't look so big compared to Jordan Love's 6 right now, but there is time. And through 5 weeks, he's got 1,083 yards and 8 touchdowns. So there's definitely room to grow. And the one point of comparison I also will make is their weapons. Aaron Rodgers walked in with 9-year Donald Driver and 2nd-year Greg Jennings. These are Packers greats, and they took time to develop. Are you going to say they are Packers greats?
Who's going to win the race, a snail or a cheetah? It
Donald
doesn't make any
Driver is
sense.
going to win that race.
You can't compare Rodgers and
No, but
and-
here's what you can compare. Love's weapons is 2nd-year Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, and then you have 1st-year wide receiver Jaden Reed and rookie tight ends Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft.
And you're
That is
2 and
a
3.
whole different offense that
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers was working
And you're
with.
2 and 3. Yeah,
Yeah, but you got to have time. It's week 5. There are so many teams like the Bengals. Are you going to say Joe Burrow's
Well,
done?
the
'cause he
Packers
hasn't
are
been
supposed to be
playing
good
well?
at the game of football this year. I mean, look at the weapons.
No,
they
but
have.
here's the thing. What were the expectations for the Packers? Mid. 500
Mid doesn't look
season.
like 2 and 3. Do you know who has the worst completion rate in the NFL? Do you know who it is?
Tell me, Matthew.
It's Jordan Love. Okay, at 55.6. Okay, 55.6. That means of the all completions, he completes it 55% of the dang time.
It's
He's
not
got
all his
6
fault.
interceptions. Packers are 2 and 3. Who's going to win the race? A snail or a cheetah? It's not like we're comparing apples and apples here. You're comparing
It
an apple
is.
and maybe a fruit from another dimension.
It is the same situation, though, in the sense of Aaron Rodgers had the shoes to fill with Brett Favre. And when Aaron came in, everyone's like, who's this dude? Like, this ain't our QB1. Jordan Love, we believe in him, and that's the key factor. It's
glad
also on Matt
belief is over
LaFleur
everything.
because it's on him to make the game plan easier. We don't have escape routes for Love. And throwing the ball in the end zone, trying to win the game with 44 seconds left,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah, I believe in winning the lottery, but we
Hey,
haven't got
Love,
there yet.
lottery, both start with
let's go.
L. Boom.
Do this anymore.
I love my QB1. I never
Terrible
switch him
quarterback.
up.
Awful. 2 and 3.
Speaking of awful, I'm kidding.
Switching gears a little bit, the Miami Dolphins have had a historic start to the season offensively. 4-1, 2,568 yards total, and 24 touchdowns. After dropping 70 on the Broncos, they followed it up with an embarrassment in Buffalo with a 28-point loss. Matthew, is Miami a real contender for the Super Bowl?
A contender? Yes. Are they a high contender? No. You got to compete with the Chiefs and, of course, the Niners, who have really made a lot of big surprises this year, and, of course, the Eagles. Are they probably 4th on that list? Yes. But are they contenders? Yes. You're talking about a team that just lost A-Chain and still is going to be the most dominant offensive team in the AFC, just purely because they have so much depth, okay? It is ridiculous that anybody would say just because of one injury they're not contenders. Their offense is insane. Their defense is good. Okay, it's not great, but you digress.
I do agree with you on the fact that the AFC is just a crazy dogfight at this
wide
point.
open.
And the biggest advantage for Miami is their speed. In their win over the Giants, A-Chain reached 21.76 miles per hour on his touchdown run. And then right after, Tyreek Hill caught a pass from Tua on the next drive that went for 64 yards, and his top speed, 22.01 miles per hour, which is the fastest ball carrier speed in the NFL season. They are young, hungry, and they have star power. I just don't know if they'll be able to contend with the Chiefs, who have that playoff
They also get
experience.
Chubb, A-Chain, and Ramsey back soon, so
Yeah.
good pieces.
But moving on from the NFL, we got NBA. We're going to have our analysts give their predictions for every seed 1 through 8 in each conference. Caitlin, kick us off.
Don't mind if I do. Matthew, Riley, care to guess my number 1 seed for the East? Matthew?
Got any guesses?
Go.
Oh my gosh, how did you know? Give me the Bucks, baby. It is Dame time in MKE, and the star power of this team is truly untouchable, especially for Miami, right, Matthew? Oh, still salty you didn't get Dame? All good. Number 2, give me the
won.
Celtics. Drew Holiday, Defensive Player of the Year. I'm calling it. It's comeback season. And number 3, I got to go Jimmy Butler in the Heat. 4, give me the Sixers and Joel Embiid. 5, the Knicks. 6, the Chicago Bulls. And 8, give me the Pacers. For the West, nothing special or surprising. Give me Jokic and the Nuggets at 1. D-Book and the Suns at 2. Curry with the Golden State 3. See what I did there? LeBron and the Lakers at 4. The star-studded Mavs at 5. OKC at 6. The Clippers at 7. And last but certainly not least, the Sacramento Kings at 8. Matthew, what you think?
Well, the Bucks are 1. The Bucks were 1 with or without Dame, right? You're talking about arguably
That
the
is
deepest
music to my
team to
ears.
ever play in NBA history.
Oh,
They
Matthew,
are
keep talking.
so deep. Their bench is, I've never seen it before. Jay Crowder, who's a starting power forward on a championship level team every year, didn't even play last year in the playoffs. So that should tell you. Give me the Bucks at 1, the Celtics with the addition of Drew and Porzingis at 2. Give me the Sixers with a brand new coach, same core at 3. And I'll take Cleveland, who had an excellent summer. They all worked out in Miami. A lot of chemistry. Donovan Mitchell's coming back with a chip on his shoulder at 4. A bad regular season team always shows up in the finals. The Miami Heat at 5. The New York Knicks, who get Dante DiVincenzo, a great move to pair with some other Villanova guys with Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart at 6. The Atlanta Hawks, who stink, but the East isn't that great, at 7. And the Toronto Raptors, who are the best of the worst. I was deciding between them and the Bulls, but they add Jalen McDaniels and Dennis Schroeder. Good pieces.
Fair to say, fair to say. Beyond those picks, really quickly, any dark horses to look out for?
Well, the obvious one is the Miami Heat. You can't look past them. They get as far as they do for a reason. And obviously, I'm going to go in the West. Give me the Clippers. I think with healthy pieces, they can be extremely good.
Okay, I'm going to go off the rankings. I definitely think the dark horse team to look out for this season is the Minnesota Timberwolves. And a big factor this season is going to be the continued growth of Anthony Edwards. Edwards took a huge leap in his junior season, averaging a whopping 25 points per game and showing his true all-team potential. He's already showed his 4th-year growth spurt in his time with Team USA. And for Minnesota, defense is going to be their brand. Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, one of the most elite rim defenders of the century, and Kyle Anders, another elite defender, are sure to give this league a good scare.
Well, they would have to have Anthony Edwards put up 54 points a game in order to make that
Hey,
happen.
who knows?
but
We said dark horse.
yeah,
Miami
that's a
Heat,
pretty
everyone
dark
expects
horse.
it.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this segment of Rocky Talk. We appreciate you all for watching. We're going to throw it back to the Orange Zone guys right after this.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Orange Zone. I'm Jackson, that's Zach, Colton, and Luke. We've headed over to the Den, and we're going to embrace the Halloween spirit with our Week 6 terrors. Each of our analysts have chosen a team that was haunted last week, and we're going to run through what happened. We start in Southern California with Zach's selection.
So, unlike any other team this week, USC actually won. Or any other team on this list, I should say. USC actually won. Now, having two close wins against Colorado on the road, a 48-41 win, and then a Arizona at home 43-41 triple overtime win is, room for a little terror, a little scariness. They play on the road this week at Notre Dame. I think with Caleb Williams being the only star on that team, fair to say, with 3 rushing touchdowns last game, and he pretty much put the team on his back. I think it's fair to say that Notre Dame might have, I don't want to say an easier game, but I think it's going to be a closer game. I think Notre Dame will take it because they are due for one after being on a two-game losing streak. But I think, Caleb Williams just cannot do this on his own.
If you have a great offense, doesn't matter if your defense is terrible. Let's head to Texas, where we're going to go over what happened this week with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game had the most impact out of any game this week on the college football playoff. Texas was primed to make it there. I mean, they went into this game undefeated with a win against Alabama and with a Big 12, which is, the Big 12's terrible. I don't think there's any other ranked teams other than Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12. So with their remaining schedule, Texas was primed for an undefeated season if they won this game. But with this loss, I think it knocks them out, of the college football playoff altogether. Because, like I said with the Big 12, they're not going to have any other big wins to, come back after this loss. The only chance they have is if they get to the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma and win. But even then, they already have one loss, and there's so many undefeated teams right now. We could really see in all 5 power conferences this year an undefeated team in each of those conferences. And I just don't think there's any way Texas makes it through at this point. With that one loss and this game against Oklahoma, and they had it too. 1:22 left. They were leading. Oklahoma goes in, drives, scores a touchdown with about 15 seconds left, and wins the game. It's just a heartbreaker. And I think this game, like I've said multiple times, I think it knocks them out. I think their season's pretty much over. They might get a high bowl game, but that wasn't what they wanted coming into the season. They wanted to make the college football playoff, and I think their chances of that is over.
Yeah, absolutely. That one definitely is not one they want to remember. However, we're going to go over to Miami, which may be the worst of the teams that we've seen. Luke, talk us through what happened to Miami and how that just exploded.
I've tried to comprehend this entire week, and I still haven't found a great explanation for this. But, going into the season, Miami was not really known as a contender for any playoff spot. And their only hope was to go undefeated, which they were going into this game. And being an undefeated 4-0 against a 2-3 Georgia Tech, you're going to be heavily favored, and they just did not look like a Miami football team this week. As a Miami fan, you don't want to see Tyler Van Dyke throw 3 interceptions. They just couldn't get the offense going. It was a very defensive battle, which is not a good against the Georgia Tech team that they played. And it was very evident that coaching played a huge part into this loss as well.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine being a Miami fan watching this game from home. A minute and 18 left on the clock. You're up by 3 points. The other team doesn't have any timeouts remaining. You just take a couple knees, get out. You didn't play a great game, so you just take your win. Get out, stay undefeated, and learn from the close win. But no, we decided to run the ball, and we decided to fumble the ball at that, giving Georgia Tech a chance. 2 plays, they score, and just like that, you go from keeping your season undefeated to ruining your entire season and barely staying ranked.
Absolutely.
But it was just, I can't quite comprehend what went through the coach's mind there. It seems like a pretty straightforward decision to just knee the ball and get away with a win.
Look, USC may have had a couple ghosts, but they're still doing okay. We look at Texas; they're a little haunted, but Miami's a haunted house right now. That's horrible. But we wish those teams the best of luck as they try to right their last week's wrongs. But as for us, we are all out of time. Thank you so much for watching. For Zach, Colton, and Luke, I'm Jackson. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
The Titans have disappointed me yet again for the 3rd time when we've only been through 5 weeks of the season. I went into the game watching it with no expectations so I wouldn't get disappointed, yet I still got disappointed. I just don't get how a team can be this inconsistent, and I don't even know where it's coming from. And we haven't lost to the Colts in over 1,000 days. We were kind of reigning over the Colts for a minute. And then we had Jim Irsay go into a full Twitter meltdown about how everything needs to happen so he can make sure that the Colts beat the Titans. And what do? Lay an egg. So we lay an egg versus Zach Moss and freaking Gardner Minshew, out of all people. And then when Anthony Richardson went out, you would think the defense would make adjustments to, adjust to the new, more experienced quarterback. Nope, they didn't make any adjustments, just like their run game. So the one thing that the Titans pride themselves on is the run game, stopping the run. We haven't allowed over a 100-yard rusher since September of last year. And how many yards did Zach Moss have this game? 165. And how many carries did Derrick Henry have? 13 carries for 43 yards. And speaking of defense, that was the most atrocious defensive performance by the Titans that I have seen in recent memory. I mean, we pride ourselves on being able to stop the run, and that is exactly what we did not do. We just let them run all over us. It wasn't even Jonathan Taylor, it was freaking Zach Moss. I just can't believe that Zach Moss ran it all over us. I'd be willing to give one of my toes to T.R. Tart so he can come back to the game next week because his presence was missed so big. And Jeffrey Simmons had an apparent shoulder injury halfway during the game, and he was just invisible during the rest of the game. That doesn't help. And where was Kevin Byard, you ask? I have no clue where he was. And Christian Fulton absolutely sucked as well. It was just an absolutely atrocious performance that I just did not like to see. It's so much more devastating when you watch the defense lose you the game over the offense. It's just like, because as a Titans fan, you're just expected to have the offense lose you the game, but then the defense, that's supposed to be the strong point of your team, lets the Colts run for 200 yards and you let Gardner Minshew torch you. I mean, I just don't get it. We're supposed to be one of the most elite defenses in the league, and what happened? We lay an egg. And don't even get me started on Christian Fulton. My goodness. The guy doesn't even turn his back across anything. Just the run defense killed us. Like, I just had to sit through the pain. It was just like, is it going to happen again? And yet again it did. And the offense, they still had their same little issues. They just think they can score 16 points a game and win the ball game. That does not happen. They haven't scored over 27 points since November of last year when they played the Packers. It's unacceptable. They scored 27 points last game, but that doesn't help. You have to score more than 16 points to win the game. And their red zone offense is terrible. They could be driving the whole way. DeAndre Hopkins had 8 receptions for 140 yards. That was good. But then once we got to the red zone, all of that stopped. And 2 years ago, we were one of the most efficient red zone teams in the NFL. But then now, when we get there, we just stop and we just settle for field goals. I mean, thank goodness we have a good kicker now that we can actually trust, but field goals aren't going to win you the game. And then when you pair that with a defense that's just letting the team run the ball through you, that's not going to help at all. And it didn't help that we didn't run Derrick Henry enough yet again. Tim Kelly has to know that the more you run Derrick Henry, the more you win. The more the offense is better. He only had 13 carries for 43 yards. Where is that going to get you? I get the offensive line isn't that good, but we have to give him more of a chance. He's a future Hall of Famer, and our offense revolves around him. And I just don't get it. It's just like they're a box of chocolates. I don't know what to expect each week. I don't know what to expect next week because we're freaking playing in London. They're going to be on jet lag, and I just don't know what to think. I don't know if the defense is going to show up. We have injuries there. I don't know if the offense is going to score 3 points or 27. And yeah, now they're traveling to London where the inconsistencies are going to strike again, but he'll even knows with this team because I sure don't. All I know is that they have to figure out this solution quick or else they can go 2-4 and their season could be going downhill in an instant and we could see Malik Willis out on the field later in the season. Thanks for listening.
That concludes this week's episode of Torch Sports. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more fun and in-depth discussions of your favorite sports teams. Make sure to follow us on TikTok at Torch Sports and on Instagram at Torch Sports UTK. Have a great weekend, and as always, go Vols.